Is this the best Trails game yet? Maybe. Is it a great place for newcomers to jump in? Absolutely not. It's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and we're starting 2026 off with a freaking bang. Trails Beyond the Horizon is the long-awaited moment for Trails fans, in which we are now, finally, fully caught up to Japan. They don't know any more about the overall plot than we do. Let me tell you, that feels weird. For the last 12 years, I've been following this series, been in love with this series, but I've always been afraid to go online and look up theories and whatnot because I knew I would accidentally stumble upon spoilers. Well, no more fear starting now. I know as much as anyone about Trails. You can't spoil me, though I guess the shoe is on the other foot. I could spoil Trails for other people if I wanted to. If I was a jerk. I mean, obviously, I don't want to do that. But look, we're here to talk about Horizon, so let's do that. Thanks to NIS America for sending the code my way, and thanks to all of you for liking and subscribing and all that stuff. Let's get into it. Let me cut right to the heart of this. Trails Beyond the Horizon is not for newcomers. It becomes pretty clear by the end of this title that Trails is entering its endgame, and this is the point where all the significant threads from all the previous games are starting to come together. Even just playing the prologue, I remember thinking, I can't imagine what someone who had never played Trails would even think about all this. They would have no idea what was going on, and while that can often be fun in its own way, here I just feel like it would be extremely frustrating. But for Trails fans, this is that good stuff. For a series that had gotten so good at posing intriguing questions, I'll admit I sometimes worried that maybe they wouldn't be so good at presenting satisfying answers. But if Horizon is any indication, I think this will all conclude in a very satisfying way, even if it has to rip our hearts out in the process. Right out the gate, and you've seen this if you played the demo, you're getting bombarded with returning characters and a situation that is just absolutely dripping with deep lore. Van and a couple of friends are asked to participate in some product testing for the Marduk Total Security Company. And yeah, to an outsider, that sounds pretty dull, like writing a report for the Consumer Product Safety Commission about, blenders. But Trails fans know Marduk makes things go boom. You're on site to put their new combat gear through the ringer. This is the game's way of introducing a handful of new gameplay mechanics, which mostly revolve around ZOC. Maybe the game said what that stands for at some point, but I missed it if so. I always want to say ZOC, but it's ZOC. Essentially, this allows you to slow down time for your enemies while you wail on them in action combat, while also giving you a massive boost to your attack power for the duration of the ZOC. It's just a few seconds, but man, does it help when you're trying to take down some bigger enemies. In the past, it always felt like the game was trying to nudge you towards turn-based combat when it came to the bigger enemies, considering just how freaking long it could take to bring some of them down. But ZOC seems to be the devs' way of saying, all right, you win. Go ahead and smack these big guys into oblivion if you want. But ZOC is also useful in turn-based combat. Essentially, boosting 2 times in a row allows you to give any character a second turn without having to wait. This could be an absolute lifesaver if you find your characters getting picked off and you just can't quite get back on your feet. If you're new to Trails, you might be asking, what do you mean boosting 2 times? What's it mean to boost? And yeah, I can imagine that would be confusing. But I'm really trying to emphasize just how much context is going to be vital to your enjoyment of this game. I know that's not always the message that publishers want to get across. They want new players to grab each new game that comes out, even if they don't have a history with the series. But in this case, I actually think it would be detrimental. The layers of complexity, both in the story and the combat systems, really benefit from the player having context. And without that context, I feel like you would just not enjoy the game, and it might turn you off to the whole series. You can get that context super easily, and in a really fun way, by grabbing Trails Through Daybreak and Trails Through Daybreak 2. Those games are both available on all the major non-Xbox platforms, and playing them means you won't be starting this arc at the 3/4 point. And yes, to all the Start with Sky people out there, you can and should also grab Trails in the Sky First Chapter and Trails in the Sky Second Chapter, the latter of which is coming out later this year. You should play all the Trails games, guys. They're really great. But anyway, back to Horizon. There are a few other minor tweaks to the gameplay, such as certain characters having the option to awaken in action combat. This will slowly drain your boost points, but let you run around like a superpowered maniac until they run out. But like I said, only certain characters can do it, like Van and Reen and Kevin. So depending on who you prefer to control, your mileage may vary with how useful this is. Oh, but speaking of Van and Reen and Kevin, Trails Beyond the Horizon uses a different storytelling system than most other Trails games. Longtime fans will recognize it from Trails into Reverie and Trails Through Daybreak 2, though. Each of the major acts of the story are broken up into multiple routes. I feel like that term is maybe a little misleading because they're not routes in the visual novel sense where your choices are changing the story. They're basically just different characters' stories that all eventually coalesce into the main plot. The focal characters in this game are Van, Reen, and Kevin. If you're a Cold Steel fan, you're no doubt psyched to see Reen back in action. It must have been awful for you having to go 2 whole games without Reen. I kid. I like Reen, and it genuinely is really cool to get to see him in this new context. Plus, Reen's story brings back some of my all-time favorite characters, like Toa and Crow and Fee. Fee and Toa have already been a staple of the Calvard arc, but seeing them with fellow Thors people again actually warmed my heart. They're a good bunch of kids. I like them. And Kevin. Oh my gosh. Kevin. We haven't actually seen him since, I want to say Trails to Azure. Was that the last time he was actually on screen? I know he was present for certain big events, but we didn't actually see him. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about that, but I think it's been that long since he's been an active part of the story we're experiencing. And Kevin is as great as ever. Like everyone else, he's a little bit older, maybe a bit wiser in some ways, but he's still lacking in some significant areas. Like as a person, not as a character. I think his flaws make him so much more likable and understandable as a character. His arc has him teaming up with the picnicking front from Trails into Reverie, namely Swin, Nadia, Rufus, and Lapis. And if you're maybe thinking this seems like an oddly mismatched team, well, you're right. But I love all their interactions. Nadia is a little bit of a diva and butts heads with Kevin almost immediately. Swin has that barely hanging on look of bemusement on his face almost constantly. Lapis is eating everyone out of house and home. And Rufus is, look, I'll be honest with you. Rufus is straight up goals. If I could just walk around all the time in a dope ass suit and just look cool as hell, you better believe I would do that. Just wander the world in my cool car with my friends who all call me boss. That's the friggin' life, and I'm not being facetious. I want to be Rufus. Well, sort of. There's some things that happen, but I'll let you experience those for yourself. And of course, being part of the Calvard arc, Van is the other main character. If you're like me, you might have been expecting the story to be pretty well balanced between the 3 characters, but sadly, that's not the case. There's about twice as much Van as anyone else. It's not a bad thing, really, especially with how much I love the entire Calvard arc cast. I'm just saying cherish the other routes because there just aren't as many of them as you might initially have thought. Van and the other members of Arkwright Solutions are trying to solve another mysterious crime, this time involving people seemingly getting drawn into some kind of creepy cult or something. It's not 100% clear what's going on there for a while, but naturally the plot eventually starts to reveal its grand connections to the overall story. It's fantastic. The story is just so good in this one, you guys. Well, good, but with an asterisk. Let's talk about that asterisk real quick. The pacing in Trails Beyond the Horizon is kind of bad. You might be thinking, Brandon, the pacing in almost all Trails games is pretty bad. They're slow, deliberately plotted games, not for the impatient. And that's basically true. But I think the time for that style of storytelling has ended for the Trails series. Here's the problem as I see it. From the beginning of Beyond the Horizon, Falcom's storytellers know what they've got going for them. You are super intrigued by the prologue. You see all these major players coming together in mysterious ways, and they just absolutely have you on the hook. Then the prologue ends, and Act 1 begins, and boy oh boy do they ever slam on the brakes. Now, instead of advancing the ever more intriguing plot, you're back to running errands for people. If you're a completionist with these games like I am, you can't leave a green check mark undone. Optional side quest is not a word in your vocabulary. And so you solve every trivial problem for every random citizen and you make a paltry amount of money for your troubles. and the plot just kind of sits there, waiting. This is where I complain about the Trails formula. I am a Trails fan, have been since the very, very beginning. I love Trails. But the formula is not appropriate anymore. The story can't sustain itself under the weight of all the side quests and random asides it traditionally has felt comfortable including. Trails has become far too beholden to its format. A chapter begins, you spend the first half of your workday solving problems for random people, after which a significant story beat finally happens. Then it's the afternoon, and you spend your time solving problems for random people, after which a significant story beat finally happens. Then it's nighttime, and you spend your time solving problems for random people, after which a significant story beat finally happens. Look, I love that formula. In the first game in an arc, Trails Through Daybreak 1, that formula did so much heavy lifting with the world building and character development. It helped us understand who Van is and what he stands for. But 3 games into Calvard, we know that stuff already. Even worse, the game contrives goofy reasons for Reen and Kevin to both separately take on 4 SPGs in Van's stead. There is no logical reason why they would want to do that. It makes no sense. They try to make it make sense. I see the flimsy reasoning they shoehorn in, but it's nonsense. Here's where they went wrong, in my opinion. If they wanted to have Van's route contain these sorts of side quests, fine. That's what he does. He's a Spriggan, and he takes on random jobs for people like that. It's part of who he is. But instead of forcing Reen and Kevin into that same mold, let their stories happen more realistically and organically. I will say there is one chapter that forgoes the usual formula, and it is genuinely such a breath of fresh air. It's how I felt about the entirety of Trails into Reverie. There was a game that knew the formula didn't make sense in that context, and so it just got rid of the formula. I loved it. Again, I like the Trails formula, but I just think the creators are trapped by it. When the story demands things loosen up, I think they need to listen to the needs of the story. But okay, yeah, the story in this game, despite my issues with some of the ways it's told, it's freaking fantastic. Man, this is the hard part of doing a review for a game like this. At this point, I'm sure I'm only talking to Trails fans, or at least those of you who have played enough of the games that Horizon is of interest to you, but I still want to be respectful of people who maybe are just sticking around because they're enjoying, like, my beard or something. Maybe you just like to look at my beard. That's fine. I want to cater the experience for you as well. That's actually almost definitely untrue. I get so many comments telling me to stop being on camera and just show game footage. Well, too bad. I'm here, I'm bearded, get used to it. Okay, but seriously, I don't want to say anything specific about the story. I'll just say that this game is a fundamentally different experience than all the rest from a story perspective. It's clear we are entering the final chapters of this story, because now, even though they of course are still introducing new mysteries and new characters and new conflicts, they're also finally starting to provide some answers. And I mean, answers about the nature of the world the characters live in, answers about what Ouroboros have been doing all along, answers about the mysteries of the Septian Church. Like, I feel like this game is just a taster's menu of the sort of answers we're going to get in subsequent entries. We find out just enough about certain things that I am left absolutely ravenous to learn more. And not in a teasing sort of way. I mean, I think you could justifiably say some of these bigger questions are now answered. And even if no more information about them came forward and was just left up to your interpretation, it would still be satisfying. But there is definitely a ton more waiting to be explained. Honestly, there are questions answered here that I think a lot of people probably didn't even realize they had. Things that will cause you to look back on the entirety of this 20-year-long series and go, wow, like they had to be planning some of this stuff from the beginning because things are just fitting into place so well. We also get to know our existing characters even better here with some genuinely emotional scenes playing out. Some of the most emotional scenes are actually optional, which is crazy to me. A lot of those optional scenes, you'll know from previous games, they typically involve bonding, where you only have a certain number of points to spend on bonding events, and when you run out, you just can't see the ones you didn't choose. Horizon smartly adds the ability to view scenes you chose not to watch via the Garten, so now you don't have to save your game before your choice so you can reload and watch every scene anymore. That's a huge quality of life improvement right there, and frankly, I'm kind of surprised it took them this long to add that. It's been an issue since Cold Steel 1. I mean, technically, I guess, since 0 in some ways, but I digress. I mentioned the Garten, so let me touch on that briefly. This is a quasi-optional, quasi-required side mission through random dungeons that rewards you with a bunch of cool conflicts with Ouroboros and some of that good, deep lore. I'm pretty sure only the first portion of it is required in the technical sense. Like, I don't think you need to finish it all in order to complete the game, but you'll definitely want to. If you're still playing the Trails series with its 13th entry, you're definitely the sort of person who is going to want to mine every bit of lore that it's got. Oh, but I was starting to talk about the characters, so let's do that. I love the characters in the Calvard arc. They're fantastic. Aaron is as snarky as ever, and his back and forth with Judith is maybe the funniest it's ever been. Speaking of Judith, she really snuck up on me, and she is quickly climbing the charts as one of my new favorites. She's freaking hilarious and just feels maybe the most real out of all the characters. And that's despite her being both a movie star and a magical phantom thief. That's how real she feels, with her messy apartment and terrible memory and manic energy. Without spoilers, I'll just say the scene where Aaron is absolutely losing his mind at Judith's expense in the auction house ranks up there as one of my favorite Trails moments. We also get to spend a lot of time with Yorda, who was a new character introduced in Trails Through Daybreak 2. She was and sort of is a villain, but since Van is comfortable operating in that gray area, she also hangs around and helps out a bunch. She's standoffish and grumpy and really fits that teen girl mold that's both very endearing and also makes you want to strangle her. Metaphorically. I mean, don't strangle children or anyone. Take strangling off the table altogether, please. Ouroboros gets a couple of newbies this time around too. Simeon, the Imaginator, is a powerful dude who wears a hat that's too big and seems like a sort of McBurn stand-in. And Ulrika, the influencer, is, well, she's a TikTok influencer. No, I'm not kidding. She's a social media content creator. She is also genuinely hilarious. I know some Trails fans get up in arms about modern slang showing up in the localizations of Trails games. I've heard it argued that it makes them less timeless, which has always felt a little silly to me, to be honest. These stories don't need to be timeless in that sense, especially if timeless is just another word for bland. Ulrika takes that feedback from that portion of the fan community and says, oh, you didn't like Riz? Well, get ready to be furious. And look, I think we all just need to relax here, okay? It's totally fine to be a weeb and also have a sense of humor. I'm living proof that it's possible. But they absolutely nail that irritating influencer lingo with Ulrika, and she's a ton of fun. I'll be curious if and how they'll use her going forward. All in all, this is yet another fantastic localization from NIS America, made to feel even better after the lackluster localization of Trails in the Sky First Chapter remake. Though, to be fair, First Chapter's localization did get better as the game went on, but those early chapters were rough. Like, AI translation level rough. This is Trails as it should be. Trails showing me once again the reason I fell in love with the series. It's brilliant. Trails Beyond the Horizon is proof to me that Falcom knows what it's doing and where it's going with this story. It's hurt by pacing issues caused by their reliance on their formula, and I hope they've given that some thought as the series concludes. The time for slow-paced storytelling kind of has to end at this point. There are big things happening in Zemuria, and we're just not going to have time to find lost cats anymore. Anyway, this is an A+ of a game. The combat is superb as always, and the few new additions to the systems just keep making it better. The story, the characters, the music, all just incredible. This is a winner. It should definitely not be your first Trails game, but it's going to be here waiting as a reward for diving into the series. That's all for now. Let me know your thoughts about this game, the demo, or the series overall down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks to my channel members for helping me make this possible. Oh, and if you like JRPGs, check out my podcast, the JRPG Pursuit. Link is in the description for that. See you later.